Hey, good human. Kisses to everyone. Good evening. It is Friday night, 7 o'clock. Cheers if you got yourself a mocktail or a cocktail. Cheers to you all. Thank you so much for being with us here today. This is Inaudi Gill, your host for what's obviously your favorite podcast, especially if you're joining us on a Friday evening. So thank you. I see some friends already. Hola, Rosie. Gracias, amiga, por estar aquí conectada con nosotros. It is exciting. I am really happy for tonight's episode and can't wait to get right into it. But first, I want to shout out our awesome platinum sponsor for this week's episode. So, Hudson Valley Kitchen Design Center. So excited to share your premier one-stop shop for all things kitchen, bathroom, office, pantry, and closet design. Don't get fooled by the name Hudson Valley Kitchen. They are a design center, full-blown design center. They are certified living in place professionals, which allows them to be able to create spaces that works for folks of all abilities and at all life stages, which I absolutely love that about them. The fact that they took it a step further in their certification to make sure that they're taking into consideration all those wonderful, sometimes the challenges and the things that impact people differently in different parts of their lives. They have an interior design team for creating spaces that are a reflection of everyone's personality. So they work really closely with you for any part of your home. And my favorite, locally owned, family owned, and really huge supporters of everything that we do. So please follow them on social media. Shout out to Jim. Shout out to Holly. Thank you for supporting tonight's episode. And to kick off tonight's episode, I want to start it with a quote. So tonight's quote, I think, really speaks to the heart of what so many of us struggle with, and it's about authenticity. Authenticity requires vulnerability, transparency, and integrity. And I want you to hear that again. It requires vulnerability, transparency, and integrity. And I feel like there are so many words missing there because I feel like to be authentic, it requires pain. It requires us to have gone through things in life that help us remind us to be authentic. It requires us to be grounded with our beliefs, our values, the things that make us who we are. Authenticity requires us to grow all the time. And it's not easy. So please, if you're out there watching, write us a note. What is authenticity to you? Is it easy to be authentic? I don't know. At what age did you finally decide I am going to be who I am unapologetically about it? And that leads me to our guest tonight. I'm so excited to get to tell you a little bit about my friend, Genesis Ramos, who's about to come on. But first, let me tell you a little bit about her. So she is the proud daughter of Honduran immigrants and the first woman of color to be elected to the Orange County legislature here in New York State. At 29, she made history with that achievement and is currently also the youngest legislator in the Orange County legislature. So we're so proud of her for really representing in such an amazing way. She has extensive experience in nonprofit sector, particularly in health equity initiatives. And besides being a county legislator, Genesis is a special advisor to the Vice President of Programs at Policy Inc., which is a national think tank dedicated to public policy and research, advancing equity for all. Genesis, amiga, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. So glad you said yes. I mean, not that I would have let you say no, but still. So, amiga, the daughter, the tia, the sister, the partner, the friend, the world traveler, Ms. Loves to Travel, public servant, elected official. So many hats, so many titles, but tell us in your own words, who is Genesis Ramos?
Yeah, so you really did hit a lot of who Genesis is. And I feel like when we get asked this question, we so often default to the professional who we are. And so really tonight I'm feeling compelled to move away from that and just speak to who I am. in so many other ways. And, Genesis is a risk taker. She is a compassionate and caring person who just navigates the world with curiosity, who is very open, tries to be open. At this point of my life, I've learned to really try to lean into honoring differing perspectives, right? Like that's been such a growth edge for me. Um, so Genesis is a lot of things, right? But I think like all of us, I'm still figuring a lot of this out. Figuring it out and taking this life thing day to day. But I do wear many hats that I'm super proud of, that I love, like you said, aunt, sister, partner, like legislator, so many things, being able to be of service. So
Yeah,
to be proud
that's
of.
beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate so much you talking about growth and you talking about that learning edge and being willing to, right? But how did you get here, right? Let's talk about your journey and what led you and who led you to where you are today.
Yes. So how did I get here? So I was born and raised here in the city of Newburgh. That is my beautiful family.
Oh, love them, love them.
I am a very, very proud daughter of hardworking, humble immigrants. My parents came from Honduras to Newburgh in the late 80s. I have an older brother who has been instrumental throughout my entire life. Um, and really, we are small but tight knit. And so much of what I grew up seeing was my parents' perseverance, their hard work, um, seeing their work ethic, right? And I think whether they knew it or not back then, so much of that just became ingrained in me. And really, so much of what I witnessed my parents do has led to where I am today, but also the community that I've been part of, right? Like being born and raised in a place like the city of Newburgh, where unfortunately there is a narrative and a connotation attached to the city of Newburgh that I think doesn't do justice to the beauty and the love and just the abundance of amazing individuals that actually
The resilience, the passion, all of it, all of it.
exactly. And so I think just growing up in such a humble home.
What did that look like? Tell us, what did it look like, right? When you talk about the things you saw in your parents and the work ethic, what did that actually look like?
So, growing up, my parents worked full time, right? And then they had second jobs, cleaning jobs. So that looked like me and well, I was small, but like my parents would clean banks, they would clean the Central Hudson building. And so they would be, working full time during the day, going to their cleaning jobs at night. It looked like me and my brother sharing a room until I was 12 and he was 18. Um, I grew up on Hasbrook Street in the city of Newburgh, and growing up there definitely provided a lot of insight and exposure to a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
But I'm so proud of where I come from. I am so proud of where I come from, both being just a proud Honduran first generation woman and also just being from the city of Newburgh. And growing up also looked like a lot of imagination, right? We didn't always have the things, we didn't always have access to the things. And so growing up really looked like just so much imagining and dreaming, honestly.
I love it. I love it. So many people don't realize, especially folks when they grow up with lots of privilege, right? And when they grow up with the things that some of us aren't lucky enough to grow up with, you know, that we dream and we hope for. And when we do make it, when we are here, there's a reason we are who we are. There's a reason that our identities have shaped us and our experiences have shaped us. And there's a reason we fight so hard for the communities we serve, because those are our communities. They are. And I heard you talk about your family and the influence, but I've also heard you talk about one person in particular who was a really huge influence for you. Can you tell us about your mom?
Yeah. So, like you said, I mean, truly, I couldn't be where I am without my whole family. My brother, my father, they're just amazing. But my mom, and I will say, right, probably within the last couple of years of my life, now that I'm in my early 30s, I've come to understand my mother so much more and the sacrifices she made.
You know, they say we turn into our moms, right? Girl,
Yes.
I don't know who we're kidding when we say, I'm not going to be like my mom when I go. Yeah, girl, please. We are lucky to be like our mothers. Some
Okay.
of us are. Yeah.
So my mom came here at a very young age. She was in her early 20s, and she made a significant sacrifice. She left my brother behind, which I cannot even fathom how that must have been like for her. But she didn't leave him behind because she wanted to, right? It was the sacrifice she made to come to a country for a better life, for a better opportunity. And it's not that's not lost on me, the risk, right, that takes. And so when I say I'm a risk taker, um, my mom may not love that, but she was a risk taker herself,
That's right.
right? And I literally would not be here, literally, physically not here, if it wasn't for her.
Yeah.
And so I just admire the way in which really she was like the origin for our story, for our family, because as a result of my mother coming to this country, my father came to this country, my aunts came to this country, my uncles came to this country, my brother came to this country. And so really she was the catalyst for opportunity for so many folks,
Yeah.
and and that is just, I think, something that I don't think she even gives herself credit for, but it's significant, like
Mm.
literally because of her trajectory, because of her sacrifices, because of the decisions she made, that had a lot of implications, right, for herself and for others, both in the short term and long term. It actually allowed for opportunities for all of us, and that's not lost on me.
You know, a lot of people don't realize thank you for sharing that. A lot of people don't realize the sacrifices that immigrants make, right? So my parents came first. It was my dad. He came in 88, and then it was my mom in 89. So my dad left my mom with 5 children to
Mhm.
fend for herself while he was here working 5 different jobs, sleeping on the floor and on the couch of one of my aunts, trying to save money so that he can bring his wife and 5 children. Four
Yes.
technically, because one was an adult at the time. And then mommy came, and mommy had to leave all her children behind. And I can't imagine. I can't. And for 6 months, my oldest sister, who was 19 years old, by the way, oldest sister, right, took care of all her siblings. She took care of all of us. And it is such a challenge for folks who, you know, either don't have that experience or don't hear about it. Because part of the purpose of this show for me, part of the purpose that I do this really, this work, because I find my podcast to be part of the work that I do, is to highlight these stories, is for people to hear. Like, can you imagine? I can't imagine leaving my 3 children for 6 months. I mean, I have to leave them every other week for 2 days. And even then, I don't, because I go have breakfast with them or I go stop by and have a snack. I can't imagine. And that is so that today we could have the opportunity to
That's
live
right.
that American
Yeah.
dream and to come to a country that allowed us to do all of these things. And for us to work so hard, we can't let those challenges go unseen because those
Absolutely.
sacrifices shape all of us.
Yeah, totally agreed. And very similar story, right? Like my mom
Yeah.
worked jobs for a whole year to be able to bring my dad, and then, was actually separated from my brother for 6 years. And
Oh,
so, yeah, so, I didn't meet my brother until I was almost 4 years old.
oh,
No, I met him a couple of months before I turned four. And so really, like, the amount of sacrifice is significant on everyone, right? Not just my mom. I can't imagine
absolutely.
what that was like for my brother, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
so now I feel like now I can see, though, and to your point, like knowing everything that my mother went through, the sacrifices, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And by the way, the trauma, that stays with us,
Absolutely.
right? Like,
Absolutely.
I learned about my own abandonment trauma as an adult, something I had never considered, right? But when you think about psychotherapy and when you think about like, when did you ever feel? And I'm like, I don't think I've ever feel abandoned, but I must have. I was 7 years old, 8 years old. I must have wondered, where's my mom and why did she leave? And where's my dad? Right. My 6 year old brother must have, that's a hard, right? Like, how can a 7 year old understand, don't worry, we're going to make a better life and I'll see you soon. But soon could be months. And eventually it was, right? And then here I am getting on an airplane to go visit my parents on vacation because that's what the plan was. And that summer we were supposed to come spend a summer because we had our visa, right? So we were able to come in and spend our summer here on vacation. But my mom said to my dad, if they go, you better buy 3 tickets because I'm not leaving my youngest kids anymore. And at that point, we're in a 1 bedroom apartment. And my dad is like, whoa, we're not ready. And she's like, okay, then I'm leaving. And we made it. Somehow we made it ready, right? We figured it out with the help. Not somehow, we had help. It always takes a village. It always takes a village. And speaking of village, I want to give a shout out to all the wonderful folks who are listening on here. Thank you so much for your support. Michelle, thank you as always for being here. Shirley Phoenix, I see you. Thank you for being here with us and for listening and supporting this this journey of ours and listening. David, I see you get on. So nice to see you guys get on here. And of course, giving out one more shout out to our wonderful sponsors, Hudson Valley Kitchen Center, who are always so supportive of both our work, my work, and your work, Genesis. Love them, love them. So you said you didn't want to, you wanted to talk about yourself and you want to, but for a little bit, let's talk politics, because right now that's a huge part of who you are. And when I mean let's talk politics, no, girl, we're not going to talk politics. Let me clarify that for our audience. We're not talking politics. No. Let's talk about you in politics, right? Mm-hmm. So what does it really mean? I mean, you're young, quote unquote, because you've even been told to wait your turn, right? You were 29 years old and you were told, wait your turn. You're Latina, a woman of color, the only woman of color. You're a minority in all senses, right? Not only are you the youngest and only and first woman of color there, right? In this legislature, in our county's legislature, such a public facing role. What does that mean, right? What does it really mean to be a politician? Like, tell us about your life and like, what does that look like?
So I appreciate this question because I feel like it's just not talked about enough at all. The reality is we all wear masks in the world, and we all wear masks at different points and for different reasons. Right? Mm-hmm. When you are in politics, and this is me, this is my perspective, right? When I chose to run because I felt that our community wasn't being represented properly, or wasn't like there wasn't visibility into how our community was being represented. And representation really does matter, especially in a predominantly Black and brown community. And I won't say that I know every single issue in our community, even though I was born and raised here and have lived here my whole life, but I knew enough and understood enough that I knew the kind of voice that was needed at the table. Being in politics can be very brutal. There's no other way to put it, right? It can be extremely, extremely brutal. You are at a constant tug of war between, being of service and taking into consideration everyone else, right? Like the community that you hold, the people you represent, the people that trusted you, that voted you in, and even those that didn't, because you still represent them too.
You represent them all.
You represent everyone. And doing that with integrity. I feel like, as an elected official, as a politician, like, our word is literally all we have. Our integrity is all we have. And so what has made it both simple and challenging. What has literally been both the opportunity and the challenge for me personally is that it's been actually straightforward how I approach the work, right? Which is I'm here for the people. I didn't come here as a stepping stone to run for a higher office. I didn't come here for the clout. I didn't come here for any of that. I came here to do what I was elected to do.
Mm.
And that's where I think it gets dicey because that's subjective. There's no book that tells you this is how you govern. This is how you're supposed to represent your community. You really do take the onus as a politician, right? You
So you
take,
just show up as yourself in that moment.
yeah, you have choices to make. You literally have to choose how you will represent your community. And so for me, I have chosen to represent my community with courage. I have chosen to represent my community with taking risks, making myself extremely uncomfortable. Um, and also just by trying to consistently be present. I can't be everywhere and do all the things, right? Because I also work full time outside of also, being
Right?
a county legislator.
Technically, you're a county legislator part-time, even though you're
Technically.
on all the time.
And that's just it.
Right. You
That is
can't
like,
tell a constituent who's calling you and telling you they have a housing need or they're hungry or they can't feed their child today. Oh, actually, my hours don't start till tomorrow at 9.
yeah,
Call back later.
exactly. That doesn't exist, right? Like I have two phones. I have multiple email accounts. Like there's so much that you hold. To your point, it's not, you don't clock in and out. You don't choose. You don't always get to choose when you show up, quite frankly.
Yeah.
There are plenty of times where I'm tired or I may not be in a headspace for certain things, but I have a responsibility. All right. And I've been entrusted to show up for our community, and I don't take that lightly.
Yeah.
Um,
You've mentioned, sorry, you mentioned that there are times where you have to be uncomfortable, right? And when I also hear you talking, I'm hearing you talk about times where you have to make decisions that you may not even be sure if they're the right ones. But to your point of leading with integrity, right? Can you share a time where there was a challenge where you were put in an uncomfortable position, but you had to, and you did the best you could in that moment, but there was growth and learning from it because obviously hindsight 2020 and the whole bird's eye view thing, and you're like, huh, could have done that differently. Can you tell us an example of a time?
sure, definitely. Um,
You're like,
so
hold on, let me sit, right?
seriously, which one, right? Um, I think going back to the word courage, right? Going back to that notion of risk taking, and not safe politicking, because that's again, that's not what I'm here for. Um, and going back to the fact that again, there is no playbook in how you're supposed to be. There's all this decorum that's kind of expected. There's Robert's rules. There's all this stuff and this technicality. But again, there's no prescribed way. At least I will. I should say. I should say there are expectations that are unsaid. Oftentimes, actually, there are many expectations that are oftentimes unsaid. I happen to be someone who I, regardless of the party I am a part of, I will call my own party out. I will unapologetically and unequivocally say this is BS, right?
You wouldn't be serving with integrity if you only chose one side.
Exactly.
Hold on.
And
Right.
so and so going back to your initial question, I mean the biggest example I can give, because it's been very public, and this is actually the first time that I'm talking about it in such a public way. Um, Back in October, I essentially made a decision in support of a few of my colleagues in our caucus, to expose what we believed was some potential corruption, let's
Mm.
call it that, right, in county government. Um, and I did not ask permission, right? What do I mean by that? We held a press
Yeah.
conference in front of the government center, because here's the bottom line. Um, I know how the cookie crumbles, right? And sure, there might have been other ways to handle things. There's always different ways to handle things.
It's always a different way.
And I wanted to make sure, right, that our concerns were heard loud and clear. Because when you are part of a minority caucus in a governing body, it becomes a lot more challenging to be heard. And then when you add on that I look the way I look, there is an invisibility factor that happens that I have to fight all the time.
And a lot of
But
people don't
really,
understand that. A lot of people don't understand that the way
yeah,
we look, the way we are, our personalities, the way we talk, all of it, who we are, because we try to show up authentic. Even when we're wearing that mask that we're supposed to be wearing,
yeah,
it's still us wearing it. Some people don't understand that's it's an added challenge.
yeah.
Step
And I think
off.
And I think that to that end, right, I just learned at this point that I'm not going to get anywhere by sugarcoating and cutting corners and minimizing myself for others. On the contrary, I think folks learn to respect you when you just show up consistently across the board. Like, you're going to get what you're going to get all the time, and you're going to know what to expect from me. I'm someone who's going to ask questions. I'm someone that's going to do my research and be thorough. And I'm someone who's going to call the things out. I don't have a problem doing that either, right? Because I don't give into complacency. I don't give into that. I believe it's a complete disservice, right, to the folks that we represent, as if you're an elected official who just becomes complacent. And so ultimately,
Called out, right? You called out this.
yep, I called it out.
Right?
Right. And as you can imagine, there's been a lot of things that have happened since then. There's just been a lot of attacks and a lot of things that I've had to personally endure. But that was in October. We are now in June. I still stand by what I said. I said what I
You
said.
did it with integrity.
That's
did
it.
Because you've, from the beginning, have said to us that you lead in a way where you are true to yourself. And that may mean pissing some people off.
It often means that,
There.
right? It very often means that you're going to piss people off just by showing up. Literally just by showing up. And I think that that's also part of it, right? Like, the reality is that, from my observation, the way in which things roll in county government, it's very, there's a lot of complacency and a lot of status quo. Business as usual, everything is great, nothing to see here, we're all wonderful. And that's not true anywhere, right? Like,
Right.
County, it's just not true anywhere. And so I think as folks representing the interests of the people in this county, we have to also be open to challenging things that we believe aren't correct. We also have to be open to having the uncomfortable conversations and to making ourselves open to the fact that actually not everything may be running as smoothly as we think it is, right?
And it's not personal against one person or the other, but it's about doing our jobs. And if you were elected and you hold yourself accountable to every single person you represent, then that includes asking the tough questions.
That's right. That's right. And I think, there's asking tough questions, and it's also understanding that we're not always going to get it right, right? So it's also being able to be humble and admit, like, what, I kind of messed up. And I'm not perfectly okay doing that too, But in my heart of hearts, I know my intention, and the intention of my colleagues and the way in which we chose to show up. But what happens in a space where folks are kind of used to things just being a certain way forever, and then how dare someone have the audacity to say anything outside of what's expected, But the reality is that I don't, like, if we are not able to hold accountability and to hold the line, then what are we there for? And
what's the point of us being there?
What's the point of us being there? And the reality is that, there's been, like I said, a lot that has emerged since then. And there's been a lot of lessons along the way. And
let me ask you, speaking of lessons, because people also, I want to, in just a couple of minutes, just hear from you. what the intersectionality of how does this, because this wasn't easy, right? This isn't something, this particular example, but really the entire job isn't easy. How does it impact you at home, your family life, your mental health, your ability to do your job, your ability to be in a relationship, to be a daughter, a sister, and all of that? What's it like to be in politics and to be everything else we have to be?
It's very difficult. It's so difficult, right? Like there's no other way for me to put it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so difficult because you hold, so in this particular political climate where this, current presidential election year, which is just brutal, and there's so much division and apathy and ambivalence and anger. There's just so much, a lot of heaviness surrounding the political climate in this country right now. So you have that layer of it, right? And that trickles down, right? Because all politics become local at a certain point, right? And so at the local level, um, there are things that you're hearing about people's day to day, like you said earlier, the housing, the food insecurity.
Right.
And I think part of
We can go on with that list, the opioids, right? The pandemic and how that impacted people. People are still feeling, right? Health inequity. Like there are so many things impacting our community.
so much. And so you're holding all that, recognizing, right, that we often talk about systemic change and the fact that policy is the driver and that policy really drives everything, education, healthcare, etc., right? And that you are one person in this system and that it is not possible for you on your own to change all the things. So understanding your role, and that's in terms of how it intersects into the just like the rest of my life and all the other aspects of my life, part of it is the boundaries I try to set for myself and understanding what is my role, what is my capacity. It is also reminding myself that the I am a legislator. Yes, I am a legislator. I'm an elected official, but I am not the legislator. Like that is not my identity. That is not everything of who I am. And one thing I have refused to do is to absolve myself of that and to live my life in a way that just minimizes me to
Right.
this one part of who I am, which is a significant part that holds power, that holds influence, and I'm not minimizing that or disregarding that at all. But what I'm saying is that there's so much, right? I have two beautiful nieces. I have a wonderful partner. I have amazing friends. Like my support system is on point, and I love every single person that just holds me down, is there for me. I have so much, and I have my being in a national public policy organization, so fulfilling to me. I work with amazing folks from across the country. So I have so many other hats and other things that I hold. And I need to be able to tap into those different parts of myself as well. And I think to kind of close it up, like there's been times where it has 100% seeped into my personal life. I'm not going to sit here and act and pretend like I've always gotten it right. There are times where I've certainly let this seep into my personal life. My mental health has been impacted. My relationship, my partner has seen the worst of it for sure. Shout out to him because
You're
he's
human. And on top
yeah,
of that job, by the way, on top of your titles, you have your own stuff that you're going through too.
my own stuff. And that's just
Right.
it. And so the reason why I've tried to so intentionally, because it has felt critical, because being a trailblazer comes with a lot of responsibility. People are like, oh, you're the first, and it's like, yes, and there's a lot of responsibility with being the first. And so
Yeah.
much of what I want other women, and particularly women of color, to see is like, we don't have to sell our soul, we don't have to change who we are entirely to be where we want to be successful, to hold these titles that sometimes feel so intimidated and so far removed from what we can accomplish, right? Like we don't have to whitewash ourselves, and we don't have to succumb to these ideas of what decorum is at all times.
Right. Right. And I got to tell you, thank you for pointing out, because I want to make sure that we are seeing the people of and let's talk about the people of color, because in you and in your position and in my position, some folks some folks forget that when a Latina walks into a room, we are not only representing ourselves. When Latinas in power walk into a room and hold the positions that we hold, we are representing an entire community. Entire community. When a Black woman walks into a room and she's in power and she's the only one, she's not just representing herself, she's representing her entire Black community. And that's not easy. That is not easy. That is a weight we carry on these shoulders, because
Yep.
we are constantly making sure that we make our communities proud.
Right.
Right? We don't have the luxury of getting loud and angry. We want to,
And when you do,
because
yeah,
when we do, we're not taken serious, or there goes that stereotype,
yeah,
right? There it is. What everyone's been waiting for. It's a hard struggle, and it leads me to the last question for us, which is full circle authenticity. What is it? What does it mean to be authentic? Because it's hard. We can't always be authentic, can we? But we're expected to be authentic. But what does that even mean? So, Genesis, to you, what does authenticity mean?
yeah. So
What does it look like?
it looks like many things, because authenticity is not linear. Authenticity is not cookie cutter. It's not one thing. It's not one size fits all, right? We have different layers as humans, as women of color. And so I think the word and the idea around authenticity often gets stretched in ways that are not realistic,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when we're not like showing up a certain way at all times, then we feel like we're being fake or not real. And it's like, no, one, it may not always be safe to be authentic. Let's just start
Right.
there. So
I,
like you
I
said,
can
like
see
as
that
women of
long term.
color, yeah, like as women of color, it's not like it's not always in the cards for us, right? So it's less about, it's not that you can't show up authentic, it's more about we have to be more strategic and calculated in what that means and what that looks like for us.
There are
And that's
levels of authenticity.
absolutely, there are levels of authenticity, because at the end of the day, um, there's still expectations, right, in certain settings and certain spaces and places. But ultimately, what I've come to understand about authenticity is that it's not about perfection. It's not about us um, always being able to necessarily show up exactly the same everywhere,
Hmm.
but it's about our integrity, right? It's about the ways in which, even if I'm having different conversations with different folks, that I am still showing up the same, if
Mm.
that makes sense. Like it's impossible to always be the same, but what is possible is to always hold your integrity, to always show up with what your truth is. And that is possible, right? That is possible. And the reality is that authenticity, and also to your point about having layers and levels, right?
And many hats,
And
like one of
yeah,
our viewers is talking about, right? Thank you, Carol, for that. We hold many hats. We
exactly.
all look the same.
Exactly. And so how I show up authentically with a friend may be different than how I show up authentically at work. But our essence, like the core of who we are,
Value.
that like I said, like our truth, that is going to remain the same no matter where. And that's what I've learned to lean into. Right?
Mm.
Like that piece is what I've learned to lean into. So if I'm going to cry, y'all are going to have to see me cry. If I'm going to curse, y'all are going to hear me curse. Like
If
it's
you're
really,
gonna say the math ain't mathing,
if I'm going to say the math ain't
you're
mathin',
gonna have to hear the math ain't mathing.
that's
You may not
right.
like it, and you may not understand it. It may make you a little uncomfortable, but that's me and who I am.
Exactly. And
Different,
so
not wrong.
that's a perfect example. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because, yeah, like in the press conference, I chose to say in my observation of things that the math wasn't mathing. Now, I think everyone can understand what that means. And yet, certain individuals chose to try to make me seem incompetent because of my choice of words. Now, don't get it twisted.
It was
Right?
used as an attack.
Yeah. But the reality is that it didn't. it really didn't bother me, you know?
Yeah, of course, right.
Just simply because I know who I am. I know where I come from, right? I graduated summa cum laude, 4.0 GPA with a master's. Like, don't get it twisted. I choose what I choose because it's my truth.
Right.
And it's what I feel is what's going to relate to the folks that I'm speaking to. It's what allows people to connect to me, and it's the reason why people have me here in the first place, because I've never showed up in a way that's like selling hopes and dreams or like, trying to oversell anything. I've literally, like, when I was door knocking, when I ran 3 years ago, I would literally tell people, I can't promise you. I can't, I'm not here to make promises. The only thing I can promise you is that I will hold my integrity in representing us. That I can promise you.
And I want to say just something real quick that we didn't touch on earlier. When we take risks, some of them are calculated. And, you talked about, we just talked about math and getting attacked. But you have to expect that, because when you come after someone in politics, you know that the results are that they're going to come back at you, right? So I want to know, I want to make sure that we acknowledge that everything we do in a public eye, right, comes with, or most of the things we do, not always do we think about what we're going to do, right? But it comes with knowing that there is a consequence to our actions and that there's a reaction to our actions. So I appreciate us talking about some of these things during the authenticity piece, because part of being authentic and taking risks is knowing it's part for the course. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, which is why some of us are made to be elected officials and some of us are not. Thank you for your service, because, girl, I'm good. I'm good. Solid. Me and my little lip gloss over here. I was about to start applying it, but I'm like, I think I can hold. I think I can hold.
Yeah.
So, Genesis, we're at the end of our time together, which makes me so sad, because everybody on here knows you and I can go on. But listen, we've got things to do after this. And by things to do, I mean I'm going to bed. I don't know what you're doing, but, Juneteenth is coming up, and this is the time where we get to ask our guests about their special interests. And you are volunteering for a Juneteenth event, so tell us about it.
Yes. So please come out on Wednesday for the 4th annual Juneteenth event here in the city of Newburgh at Downing Park. Shout out to Cream. He has been the lead organizer for this event for the past 4 years, so he's bringing it back. And so come on out and join us. It will be great. Be something for everyone, for the whole
family friendly. There will be DJs, there will be food and games, activities,
and it's free.
And if you come out and it's free and you see us, please say hi.
Yes.
Remember, we are part of the community too, so we want to say hi. Genesis, last couple of words, anything you want to say?
Yes. So thank you so much for having me, Ray. Shout out to everyone that joined us tonight. And it's not always easy to take up space. Sometimes it can be terrifying. But I have learned that if I'm terrified, I'm just going to do it with fear.
That's it.
That's it.
We're going to do it anyway.
We're going to do it anyways.
And with those words, my friends, I am going to thank you again, Genesis, for being our guest today. I want to give a very special thank you for all the people who joined us today. I saw so many of Angela was on, Isabel was on. We have so many friends on here supporting us. Thank you. Eric, un beso. Mwah. Juan B, Oda, I know you're there watching and listening. Thank you all for supporting us, but don't forget to go on YouTube and subscribe to our channel and make sure you keep watching and share. So good humans, until next time, Genesis and I are saying adios.
Bye.